Hi, welcome to the History Talks. I'm your host Will and this is Sebastian. Today we are in Waynesville, North Carolina, and we continue our series on the Crusades. In this episode we're going to be discussing the Fourth Crusade. So Sebastian, tell us, how did the Fourth Crusade begin?
Before we begin, I would like to make one small correction. Last episode I said the King of France during the Third Crusade was Philip III. I was one Philip off. It was actually Philip II who was King of France during the Third Crusade.
Okay, well good. I'm glad we got that cleared up. And let's go back and let me ask that question again. So Sebastian, how did the Fourth Crusade begin?
Well, it began with Pope Innocent III, who, not long after he took the throne of St. Peter, there was turmoil in Europe. The short version of the conflict is basically the Holy Roman Empire had been in control of the von Hohenzollerns. Pope Innocent III saw an opportunity to get a rival of the Hohenzollerns on the throne to weaken the Hohenzollerns. Wars were fought. At the end of the whole ordeal, the Hohenzollerns ended up being actually stronger.
Okay, so they came out ahead from that war.
Yeah. So from this, there was some general divisions in Europe. The conflict between France and England had only been worsened by this whole ordeal. And plus, Pope Innocent III felt like he was losing some control of his office, given he was unable to get this whole Holy Roman Empire ordeal the way he wanted it, even with his new rules on electing emperors. So in order to soften these divisions in Europe, in order to strengthen the power of the papacy, and also win some glory for himself, Pope Innocent III declares another crusade for Jerusalem.
Okay.
And unlike other crusades, which in other crusades, the crusader nobility were the ones who drew up the battle plans and the campaign, Pope Innocent III decided that he would draw up the plans. After all, previously, when the Crusader lords were left to draw up the plans, each major lord had their own idea, had their own plan of how to even get to the Holy Land, and that led to the armies getting split up and all this other stuff.
Okay. So is this the first time that happened?
This was the first time that the Pope had
The first time the Pope organized it, okay.
Yeah, or the first time the Pope planned it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before, the Pope maybe called for the crusade or gave the order for crusade.
Yeah.
But then the Crusader lords came up with all the strategy.
Yeah.
In this case, the Pope actually got involved in the strategy in order to reduce infighting among the Crusader lords.
Yeah.
Okay.
His plan was simple, and it seemed pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, have all of the army rendezvous in Venice, then, from Venice, use Venetian ships to go down south to Egypt. Then, following Richard the Lionheart's advice, you take Egypt, take the major cities in Egypt, and from there you can gain control of the Nile, which was the core of the power of the Ayyubid Sultanate. From there, they could march north and take the holy city of Jerusalem. Seemed like a pretty strong plan.
Okay.
The plan ran into failure as soon as they got to Venice. And one interesting thing to note here, Innocent III is in Rome the whole time the Fourth Crusade happens. In fact, he doesn't even know most of the events of the Fourth Crusade are happening until after they've already happened.
Okay. Even though he was involved in the planning, he's not involved in the actual, or he's not kept up to date on the actual news.
Yeah, news
Venice isn't even that far from Rome.
Yeah.
Okay.
News takes some time to travel, but stuff happened quickly, and also there was actually a rule in canon law against popes fighting on the battlefield or anything.
Oh, okay. They can be involved in the strategy, they just can't actually fight.
Yeah, they're
So
not
he
supposed
had
to
to
do that.
stay. He had to stay in Rome. Did they normally in the previous Crusades? Did they stay in Rome as well?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's there's nothing unusual there.
yeah.
Okay.
So you have all these Crusader troops who are in Rome, or no, sorry, they're in Venice, not Rome. But what's not in Venice is enough. What the Crusaders don't have is enough money to pay the army and for all the boats. There's some failure in budgeting, and so despite how heavily Pope Innocent III taxed France, they couldn't afford all the boats to carry all of the army.
Okay.
So Venice is led by a doge named Enrico Dandolo.
A doge.
A doge. Technically, doge is Italian for duke, but
okay.
in English, it's usually used to refer to the leader of a merchant republic.
I understand. Okay.
Merchant republics were led by the burgher class, as opposed to the clergy or the nobility.
Okay. And is that because that is who is able to fund the crusade? Is that why? That's who could afford to fund? Is that why they had somebody from the burgher class, a wealthy merchant?
Or basically, Enrico Dandolo was in charge of Venice, and he was the one who had the boats that they could hire to take the Crusaders to the Holy Land.
Okay.
He owned the boats, basically.
Okay.
So, but the Crusaders, they can't afford these boats. So Enrico Dandolo, being the crafty merchant that he was, says, hey, I'll let you have these boats at a reduced cost if you attack Zara. You see, Zara was a city in the coast of Croatia that was of strategic interest to Enrico Dandolo because he saw it as a major trade site that could help expand his trade empire. Because after all, merchant republics were more founded on the basis of money than any other thing. So, the Crusader army ends up taking him up on his offer and attacks Zara. News of this reaches Pope Innocent III Pope Innocent III finds out about this in 1203, a year after the Crusade starts, and despite the fact that he excommunicates the entire crusading army for attacking a city that was held by Latin Christians and populated by Latin Christians, the crusading army did this because they needed money. And because Zara was in the Kingdom of Croatia, which was under a personal union with the Kingdom of Hungary.
Okay.
All Latin Christian. All attacking it was excommunicable, according to Pope Innocent III. After this, there are two diverging paths for the crusading army. There's a contingent that says, okay, screw this. We're just going to Jerusalem, and another contingent that meets a Byzantine prince named Alexios. So there are conflicting accounts on the exact nature of this Jerusalem contingent. You see, the main chronicler for the Fourth Crusade said, "Oh, most of the army deserted us and decided to go to Acre instead of following the main army." However, when the army actually got to Jerusalem, the king of Jerusalem remarked that the army was so tiny that it barely made a difference in the Kingdom of Jerusalem's forces. So, you know, differing accounts.
Okay.
But anyways, this main Fourth Crusading army is what actually does stuff anyway, because what Alexios he's been kicked out of the Byzantine Empire. You know, he has claims to the imperial throne. He but he's been kicked out. His father's been kicked out. They still have claims, but nobody wants them. So Alexios comes up with a scheme to take back take the Byzantine Empire for him and his branch of the family. So he says, "Hey, Crusaders, I've heard you're a little strapped on cash, especially seeing this whole Zara situation. I'll pay you and give you the supplies you need, and even convert to Latin Catholicism if you turn that massive crusading army towards Constantinople to help put me on the throne." And this is why many call the Fourth Crusade the worst crusade, because the crusading army does this. They go to Constantinople, and
the reason it's the worst crusade is because the army was driven by increasing somebody's personal title or somebody's personal glory. Is that correct?
Yeah, and because this drive for personal glory led to the eventual destruction of the Byzantine Empire.
Okay.
The very thing the First Crusade was partially supposed to protect.
Okay.
Because
I see. Now we have the worst crusade. It became about somebody's personal glory, and it led to destruction.
Yes.
But we're going to get into that, right?
Yes.
Exactly how that happened. Okay.
So, because the forces of Constantinople are internally divided, and the crusading army is still, a good size, they are able to do what really no one's done before in centuries, and they actually take the city of the world's desire. They take Constantinople. They are able to successfully climb its walls and sack the city and put Alexios and his father on the throne as co-emperors of the Byzantine Empire.
And so, why were they able to take it in this case, but not in previous cases? Was Constantinople weakened compared to where it was previously, or did they simply have a better army?
The Constantinople city guard was divided internally. The political factions of the Byzantine Empire were at their peak in terms of polarization.
I see.
So the
timing just happened to be right for the Crusaders to come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Crusaders sit in Constantinople, waiting for Alexios to give them the payment he promised them, and eventually Alexios gets overthrown in January of 1204 because, again, Constantinople's populace extremely politically polarized, and the reason he was kicked out in the first place before the Fourth Crusade was because he was unpopular. So Alexios is kicked out, and his successor is like, "All right, Crusaders, can you just go to Egypt? We don't have the money you wanted, but you have the bows. Can you just go to Jerusalem or Egypt or wherever?"
Right.
But the Crusaders, they were promised payment. They were going to get what they were promised. They didn't take the city for nothing. So when the emperor, who notes that there aren't even enough resources to feed all the city because of the recent sack, and he tells the Crusaders this and tells them to just get lost. The Crusaders attack the city guard again, and this time they're not dealing with any more emperors. So they set up a Crusader state called the Latin Empire.
Okay.
They take Constantinople. Latin Christian is put in charge, and the Byzantine Empire is shattered. the Latin Empire itself only controls Constantinople and some other parts of Thrace.
Okay.
But the emperor is kicked out, and all sorts of factions do whatever in the city.
I see.
Some smaller contingents of the Crusader army set up Crusader states like Athens. Though most of the former Byzantine Empire is Orthodox Christians doing what they can. The most powerful of these being the Empire of Nicaea. Based in the aforementioned city of Nicaea, they hold on to Western Anatolia and various other parts of Greece, and are basically the last remnants of this shattered Byzantine Empire. In addition, there are states like the Kingdom of Trebizond, also Orthodox, but for most intents and purposes, the Byzantine Empire in 1204 has been crushed by these Crusaders.
Okay. And was that their intention? That was not their intention, is that correct?
At the beginning of the Crusade, their intention was not to smash the Byzantine Empire.
It was not to destroy it, but it ended up working out that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah. Some of the Crusaders were like, okay, this is going wrong, let's go to Jerusalem, which, I mean, it still barely made a difference. The King of Jerusalem decided that he still didn't have enough men to go to war with the Ayyubids. Some stayed in Constantinople to help set up the Latin Empire, and some just went home.
Wow, okay.
Pope Innocent III was... Pope Innocent III is written to have been furious about this, and Innocent III, once again, he did not know that this had happened until events had already transpired.
I see.
Until decisions had already been made.
Right. He's probably, well, he's going to be upset for two reasons. One, they started out taking a Christian city.
Yeah.
Right. Early on, which you said was an excommunicable offense, right?
Yeah.
On top of that, after they did that, they then went on to destroy the Byzantine Empire.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Then after that, it just kind of fizzled from there. They basically they took a Christian city, destroyed an empire, and then fizzled out. So that is why it's called the Worst Crusade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pope Innocent III's reaction is mixed. He, of course, excommunicates everybody involved, but then he goes and sets up and just works on setting up archdioceses in the newly established Latin Empire.
Okay, so he excommunicates everybody involved. So many of the warriors in Europe are now excommunicated. I mean, that's a lot of excommunication, right?
Yeah.
So what is their response? How did they take that? Did they say, we don't need you? Or did they go and form their own church? What do they do?
Most people just, most of the Crusader army, the part that stays in the Latin Empire, mostly doesn't care for a bit, and then eventually Pope Innocent III's temper flares down a bit. He revokes his excommunication of the army, though Enrico Dandolo, his excommunication is going to take a bit more work to get revoked.
All right.
But Dandolo, he's made his money from Zara, and he's kept his eye on this army that's taking Constantinople. And so he decides to get involved with the Latin Empire. He does some things that, seem good for the Latin Christians. He helps convert Hagia Sophia from an Orthodox cathedral to a Catholic cathedral.
Okay.
But then he also, 1204 is not just the date of the Fourth Crusade. It's also when the Mongols reached Russia. And Enrico Dandolo happens to have some maps of Russia. And he now has access, thanks to Constantinople, to the Black Sea, where the Mongols are camped.
Oh wow! But this is not part of the Fourth Crusade, is that correct?
Yeah, this is the
That's a
direct aftermath.
Okay, direct aftermath. The reason I'm asking is since we're focused on the Crusades, I'm curious if that's a separate campaign or if that is something that gets categorized as part of the Fourth Crusade.
Yeah, but Enrico Dandolo, in the long term, he in many ways ended up actually benefiting from the Fourth Crusade.
Okay.
So
he benefited personally. It was considered the worst crusade overall because of the damage that was done.
Yeah.
Although, of course, when damage is done, oftentimes there are people who individually may profit from that destruction, and in this case, he was.
Yeah, he made his money from Zara and now had a larger Venetian state.
Do you think that's something that he had planned? Was he masterminding all this, or did it just happen to work out that way?
It's not clear how much of it he masterminded. It's clear that Zara was obviously, his goal all along, but it appears Alexios and his attempts was mainly something that was just something that Dandolo did not initially account for at the very least.
Okay, and then you also mentioned this crusade began with the Pope having a strategy that he handed down.
Yeah.
Unlike previous crusades. It ended, however, with his strategy not being implemented and a merchant taking over.
Yeah.
Do you think there was any relation to that, or was that just coincidence? In other words, was it better for the Pope to simply call for a crusade and then let the warriors come up with the strategy? Do you think that would have pushed back against having a merchant using it as his own personal profiteering scheme?
You could certainly make a strong argument for that.
Okay.
After all, part of the advantage to having the Crusader nobility draw up the plans is that they were actually allowed to serve on the battlefield, so they actually knew when things were happening as soon as they happened, and could actually respond to crises like not having enough money, or to deal with people saying, "Hey, I can pay you if you help me take this."
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If basically you have a religious figure doing military strategy, if that then opens it up for something like that. Whereas military commanders are clearly going to have different motivations. They're going to have different. They're going to have their eyes on different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Innocent III's grander plan does seem like a fairly good one, but without the strong leadership from many of the kings of Europe,
Yeah. Yeah, so on paper it looks like a good idea. When actually implemented, he maybe didn't have all of the, maybe he didn't have the morale, maybe he didn't have the motivation from the warrior class that he needed, being exploitable by the merchant class.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there, and then in ending, is there anything else you would like to add about the Fourth Crusade?
Just that with all else being said, at the very least, the Latin Empire had a really cool-looking crest.
Well, that's good. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We hope to see you in our next episode on the Crusades as we discuss the Fifth Crusade. All right. Good job, Bastion.
Hey.